Welcome to Hiking with Anderson. I'm out here in the Colorado Rockies, hiking with Denver behind me, and I'm still thinking about critical theory. This is a continuation of the series I started in the last episode about critical theory. What is critical theory? What does it do? And today I'm thinking about oppression, because critical theory divides history into oppressors and oppressed. And then it recounts historical examples of that oppression. And so on one level, this could be very compelling because there's no doubt there has been various kinds of oppression. And so we can be drawn to it and say, yeah, that's right. History is just filled with this. And in a way, that's true. History is filled with misery and wickedness. So critical theory might have sort of a good starting point there for people to say, yeah, that's right. That's what history's like. But then there'll be kind of a dichotomy or antinomy that starts with the other side that says, no, you're overlooking a lot of good things that happened. You're focusing only on the negative things, and there's a lot of good things that happen that you should also understand and celebrate. So what do we do? How do we understand history? Is it mostly just oppression? Well, that got me thinking about levels of oppression. What exactly is oppression? So we might be able to grant, yeah, though history's filled with suffering. And Hume put it this way: misery and wickedness, both. Wickedness being the human side of oppression, harming others, taking from others, advancing our self-life. And I think that's what we'll see when we look at oppression. We'll see that we recognize each other's self-life. Nobody does something for purely perfect motives. We have self-life involved, selfishness, that we want something. We want money, we want an easy life, we want fame, we want glory, vainglory. And so you can look at that and you can say, look, the world's filled with people just being selfish. So what are the levels of oppression? I want to come back to that one in another video. The idea of selfishness and self-life is what drives each other crazy, but the person noticing that about another also has it. So the question is, have I repented of my self-life before I point it out in others? We have the same self-life if we understand the levels that I'm going to speak to. So I've talked about these. These are kind of the corollary of the levels of freedom I've spoken about elsewhere. So levels of oppression: political, economic. This is what most of critical theory focuses on. So you have one government oppressing another government, which then affects the people of that second government. The first government may be taking over that area for resources to resell elsewhere. And so you say, well, this is a kind of political and social oppression, economic oppression. Now, that's a lot of what it focuses on because it has a Marxist background. But that's only one level of oppression. Below that, I'm thinking about worldviews. I'm actually skipping a couple levels of freedom because you could talk about maybe psychological oppression before that, practical oppression. But I think about worldviews now. You could also have worldview oppression in the sense that educators are sent in to re-educate the group. And someone could look back and say, look, yeah, they made us dress a certain way, eat a certain cuisine, say that we believe things we didn't believe. So it's a kind of educational oppression. But here, at this level of oppression, there's going to be a jump. Because the complaint I just uttered, outwardly, I professed I believed things I didn't really believe. Now we're going to get to a jump, though. You can't be oppressed at the next level, which is the level of accepting those beliefs. Or let's call it presuppositional oppression. Once you accept certain presuppositions, there's a way in which you've entered into, let's say they're false presuppositions, all their assumptions, all the implications of those assumptions follow, and you're stuck. You could say, I'm oppressed by this worldview that I accepted. Well, that gets to the really what I want to call the final level, which is rationality. And here, you can only oppress yourself. Here, you have no one else to blame but yourself. So history's filled with misery and wickedness, but it's also filled with people blaming each other. At the most basic level, while being oppressed economically and socially, while having difficult external circumstances, you're free, as a rational being, to use reason to understand what's clear about God and the good and the moral law. Now, just doing that may not immediately alleviate economic oppression, but would. Here's what it does help you do. It helps you understand the meaning of it, which is much better than being freed from it. Imagine this: you could be freed from economic oppression and you become one of the wealthy ones, and you still don't understand, you still don't have meaning. Well, then you're not oppressed economically, but you're oppressed in meaninglessness. And that's the worst kind of oppression that I want to get to. Meaninglessness, which is due to the failure to use reason. That's the kind of oppression that we want to be freed from. And I have no one to blame but myself. If I'm not using reason, then I can't blame my neighbor. I can't even blame God. Paul considers that in Romans. Why did God make me this way? So you can't blame God. You can't blame your neighbor. You're the one who's not used reason to see what's clear about God, and there's consequences that follow from that. But here's the good news. Those consequences and the world being filled with misery can make you stop and think and make you say, you know what? I've oppressed myself in meaninglessness. I need to stop and start to use reason to see what is clear and repent of having done that in the first place. And then we get to a whole other question that critical theory doesn't get us to. And that's the question of redemption, which we're going to talk about in another episode. Thanks for joining me.